old-fashioned man am I, down to my fingertips, the sort who never could, ever would, let an insulting remark escape his lips. Alrighty then. That'll be enough. Hello, I'm Mark Lamarr, and I'm sure I'll be swearing and shouting in a couple of minutes. But before that, let's see what's been happening in the news this week. Cher revealed this week she's the only woman she knows with laughter lines on her thighs. After 12 months' research, scientists looking into heart disease at King's College Hospital were celebrating today when it was discovered it was one of their birthdays. Sweet one. Sweet little joke, birthday. What are we going to get you? Shrinking Violet Zoe Ball has revealed that since she left Radio 1, she loves not talking. I love it, she said. Best thing that's ever happened to me. Wish I weren't talking now. Can't get enough of not talking. It's fantastic. Spent a lot of wasted years in my life rabbiting, yap, 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 yap. Oh, I wish I hadn't. Oh, the silence is beautiful. It's official. Verbs are doing words. A study into 1,000 verbs revealed that most, if not all, were doing words. Bill Oddie has revealed that the reason he enjoys ornithology so much is that he came from a very tough neighbourhood, and there are only two ways out: boxing or bird watching. Cadbury's have recalled thousands of their famous cream eggs, when a small number were found to contain little chocolate beaks. This week's lottery numbers are 4, 20, 23, 37, 45 and 81. Tough one this week. The bonus ball is pie. I imagine there's going to be many winners on that one. Schoolgirl Tracy Watkiss was amazed when she cut into an aubergine to see the face of Ronan Keating. And this week, police revealed a photo of public enemy number 1. It's apparently a biscuit made from gingerbread in the shape of a human. Now, the reason this little character has become such a threat to society is because some people call him a man, and other people have taken offence, saying, no, he should be a person. But most people have realised he's just a f***ing biscuit. He's no threat to our personal freedom. Why people keep going on about it? Who cares? We've got Viennetta. Who cares? What's all the fuss about gingerbread? Who are you, Mr. Pickwick? Are you wandering around eating plum duff and fattened goose? Well, of course, you can't call it a fattened goose anymore. It's a big bone goose with slow metabolism. This troublemaker, this little gingerbread figure, he's been creating quite a fuss recently in the press, and is an example of what's normally called political correctness gone mad. And let me just point out here, if you're an editor of a national newspaper and you run a story about the gender of a biscuit, you've gone mad. Now, the gingerbread man, and I will call him that because he's based on the story of a little gingerbread man! But he's used as an example of an erosion of our freedom, although there is currently no law or punishment set aside for gingerbread abuse. And anyway, it's not one of the freedoms I hold dearest. It's a lovely dream that we all have a freedom of speech, but of course, we all know that certain words can be volatile and offensive. Now, obviously, political correctness has on occasion gone too far, but generally it is a necessary evil, and I'm quite pleased with some of the things that it's eradicated. The black and white minstrel show, for example. Not because it was racist, although it was rubbish. But then remember, every single week, exactly the same, 8 idiots in boot polish singing Old Man River and Decamp Town Races. This was in the, some of you won't remember, this was in the 70s, not like 1706 working on the levee, pleasing Massa. This was in my lifetime. Charlie's Angels was on the other side. I couldn't work out the link. There were black kids at my school, and none of them covered their lips in Tipp-Ex or wore a top hat, carried a cane or any of that. One of them did wear white gloves, but he had eczema, so that's fair enough. We don't need the black and white minstrel show. We've got S Club 7 and Des O'Connor. He knows how to entertain. He doesn't need to black up. He does need to orange up, but he doesn't need to black up. What was that? That wasn't a laugh. That was an owl. That was an owl at a party. Ooh-hoo. Ooh-hoo. I'm not even counting that as a laugh. People bemoan the fact that Punch and Judy shows are not considered politically correct. Well, of course they're not. Do you know what a Punch and Judy show is? It's a funny little story about a man repeatedly beating his wife with a stick. But how can that have a negative effect on children? Well, I'll tell you again. It's a man who beats his wife repeatedly with a stick, and you're asked to leave your kids with him. He's beating the shit out of her. But then I can see why he's tense. There's 2 of them living in that tiny little room. But, you know, that isn't big enough for any couple, but they've also got a dog, a baby and a crocodile living in there. And I wonder they're constantly arguing about who gets the sausages. You know, sometimes when you see those big bully boy blokes walking around and they've got vicious Rottweilers on a lead and you think, oh, I bet he's a nasty piece of work. He lives with a crocodile in the flats. Judy's getting beaten black and blue. It's like watching the Ike and Tina Turner story. Jim Davidson's honeymoon videos. And not only is he beating the bejesus out of her, he's also saying... The kids are laughing along. This is supposed to be a comedy show. If you were sat down watching Friends and every single week Ross was knocking 7 shades of shit out of Rachel with a cost, there'd be an uproar. But this fella, Punch, his name's Punch. I think there's a clue to his outlook on life. He's given hundreds of kids to entertain, and how does he do it? He smashes Judy about, he smashes the baby about, he smashes the dog about, he even smashes the crocodile about. And I know you can argue, yeah, but he's a fictional character, but kids don't know that. What kids see is a man beating a woman. Let's just change the name slightly. We'll leave Judy as Judy. But we'll change Punch to Richard. And let's just see how horrific it turns out now. See what I'm saying? That is horrific. That'll give me nightmares. But I think to prove the point, we should have another little look at it. If the effect of political correctness means that we no longer use offensive phrases on our everyday language, but we lose gingerbread men, bar bar black sheep, the black and white minstrel show and Punch and Judy, good. I think the world might be a better place for that. And I know there's always nitpicking about whether history means his story and maybe it should be her story. Well, you're all wrong. It should be our story. Although obviously that would be pronounced arstry. I don't really want your kids saying I've got a double arstry this afternoon. The complaints about political correctness and how it relates to personal freedom are no more than petty adult protests. People seem to assume that once you leave school, that's it. No more telling off. But that's what school is, preparing you for being told off for the rest of your life. You might be told off in a laundrette for using the dryers, but not the washers. You know, you might be consistently late for work. You might get told off for being a dirty little thief. Dirty little sticky-fingered tea leaf, put in your hands when no one wants them. You might be told off for pulling faces. In fact, you will. Would you stop pulling faces? I'm trying to do a show here. But you didn't like being told off, did you? You didn't like being told off. You really didn't like it. You should stop thieving, you dirty little light-fingered magpie. But me telling you off isn't an infringement of your civil liberties, it's an infringement of a trivial liberty. And that's what gets blown out of proportion. People are always moaning about how society's beating them down. Is that what this country's coming to? Anything that happens, 13-year-old boy becomes a father. Is that what this country's coming to? No. There are plenty of other things going on. Don't give up, don't cancel the milk. The Sound of Music's on telly this afternoon. That's not all that's happening. But there's always this big leap of logic when it comes to complaint. Here we go. Stuck in traffic again. Story of my life. Is it? Really? Surely you've missed out some bits there. What about the childhood years? Something must have happened along the way. Just the traffic, was it? People rarely take into account that if they're being punished, it's because they're in the wrong. When people get a traffic ticket, it's never, well, I brought this on myself, I shouldn't really have parked there. It's always, traffic wardens, bloody Hitler's Germany, more like. Look at them. Put a uniform on them, little bloody Hitlers. Really? I've seen a lot of films about World War II. Not seen one mention of parking infringements in it. I don't think that was Hitler's master plan. He doesn't mention it at all in Mein Kampf. He really does skirt around the issue of obstructing bus lanes. So what are our freedoms and what's worth complaining about? To discuss that with me, please welcome independent columnist and fine stand-up comedian Mark Steele, ladies and gentlemen. You write a lot about the underdog and how the underdog is treated in your columns. And you do have a sort of a fine line of what is a worthy complaint and what isn't. What to you is an unworthy complaint?
Well, I think there's two sorts of protests. There's a sort of protest that starts from looking at the world and says, well, the world is unjust. So, for example, one day's spending on defence in the world will be enough to feed the whole of Africa for a year. That is a protest worthwhile because it starts from the society as a whole. And then there's the opposite thing, which is people that sort of just become concerned, like you say, with nothing more than me, and they become these sort of whingy people, and they think everything's just going for them. Usually you've known these people and had a laugh with them, and then they get to 32 and they invite you around the house and everything's in order, and we've got all the pickles on that side and the margarine there, and it's all in the living room, all the furniture's in alphabetical order, because that way we know where everything is. You're thinking, oh, we went to the Dams together in 1979. How's this happened? Now they're saying things like, "Oh, I'm hoping to go to the Lake District in the summer" and stuff like this. And it's a sort of completely...
You've actually taken the argument away to something you want to complain about now.
I haven't.
That your friends getting.
Well, I managed to complain about, but do both sorts of complaining. I think as long as you grumble.
Yeah.
I see the people who moan about political correctness are that second category of whingy complainers, I think. And what I can't work out with them, they moan, for example, they complain because now you have to call black people black. Why can't they be coloured? Or now they have to be gay, you can't use homosexual and all that. And I think, if that's what people want to be called, why does it upset you that you're like me, we like to be called Mark? Presumably these people will go, oh, that's political correctness gone mad. Now we have to call them Mark, I suppose, otherwise we'll have Haringey Council complaining about it. Well, I'm going to call you Ethelred. I'm not going to give up.
I think of you as a Geoffrey, you are a Geoffrey. Well, I've got some examples here of things that have genuinely, in national newspapers, been called political correctness gone mad. But here's one. This is from the Sunday Mirror, and it was race harmony lessons for the police, which I think we all accept the police do need some race harmony lessons. They've been told never to use words such as mophead for Rastafarians, which you would think that's like just being polite. You would not call a Rastafarian, that's his faith, something that means a lot to him. But the Sunday Mirror's going, that's mad! You can't call Rastafarians mopheads.
The worst one, I think, or one of the best ones I've seen of that, 3 or 4 years ago, the British Army bought a weapon, and the idea of this weapon was that if you aimed this at the enemy and it went anywhere near their face, it blinded them instantly forever. And the Tories were in at the time, and their junior defence spokesman came on and he said, because there were protests about this, we had to ignore these protests because we cannot allow our defences to be sacrificed by the altar of political correctness going mad. So he must have sat there when these sort of people were protesting about this weapon and gone, oh, now it's another thing. You can't even melt someone's eyeball now. One thing after another.
You've had a life of political activism and protest. You must have been on millions of protests, haven't you?
Yeah, quite a few, yeah, and you forget what they are sometimes, yeah. But they're so unorganised, that's what makes me laugh about it. Well, there's a thing, when there's a big protest, what usually happens is the Conservative, or the press and the television, they go mad and they say there were outside agitators. You know, they always do this. And the miners' strike, they say, oh, there were some of these people weren't even miners. And when Wapping happened, some of these people weren't even printers. And then they got a bit lost in the poll tax, of course, because everybody had to pay the poll tax. So they were going, well, some of these people, they're not even, you know, they're not even people. Some of them, they're canoes and bits of mud and string and pandas, as I apparently know. And then the brilliant bit as well, they say, there was an organised force from outside the area, organised from... And I think, have you any idea about what protest is like? This is not organised. It's the last thing you could call organised. I always wish that the police were as organised as the demonstrators, because then they'd turn up and the sergeant would be going, oh no, the inspector's left the truncheons in the panda car. The left can be brilliantly funny. They can be brilliant. There's a bloke, one of the best arguments I ever had about socialism, this is bloke, it only lasted about 10 seconds. A bloke said to me, I think socialism's inevitable. I said, oh, well, I don't know, it's not necessarily. He said, oh, no, it's inevitable. I said, well, not necessarily, there might be a nuclear war. He said, yeah, well, that'd just be a setback.
What do you think is the smallest protest you've been on?
I went on one where there was a group of 4 of us and we went to meet... No, that wasn't the protest. We went to join the protest, but there was only 6 of them. But they didn't like us and they wouldn't let us on it.
What was it for? Was it against double numbers or something? What was it for?
Unemployment or something, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but some of them are good, though, to leap to the defence of protest.
Oh, no, of course, yeah. I'm not... you know, being derisory about all of them. What are the things for you that you think are these are the big protests, these are the sort of #1 personal freedoms that must be obeyed and fought for?
Well, I suppose it's sort of personal freedoms that have people around the world just to be able to do basic things in a way. But no protest is just about the thing it's about. You know, the Russian Revolution started because the typesetters were paid by the amount of letters that they'd printed. They'd printed so many thousand and then they got 1 kopeck or whatever it was. But punctuation marks weren't included. And so the typesetter said, well, this isn't fair. We want the punctuation marks should be included as well. And the management at this particular factory said no, so they went on strike, and then everyone in the town joined them, and it ended up with the Russian Revolution. But, you know, I mean, it wasn't just about punctuation marks. We're going to shoot the Tsar because those commas and the semicolon... I wonder if the management were backing down. Well, all right, you can just have apostrophes. Yeah, some poor sod doing the Daily Mirror, just all exclamation marks. I don't get paid. I don't get paid all year.
Do you ever see that protest is given like a ridiculously bad name? In Jeremy Paxman's book about the English, which is a great book, he lists all the reasons that people protested in London in the 19th century. And there was like 3 protests a week, big riot, proper protests. And one of them was because, you know, when they had to change the calendars over from the Julian to the Gregorian, I think it was, and they'd made a mistake in what date we should actually have, and they had to, one day, they had to say, right, tomorrow is 11 days on. It'll be November the 1st, tomorrow's November the 12th. And there was a riot because people thought they were losing 11 days of their life. and this presumably happens quite a lot around the world to this day. There was
What do we want? 11 days back. When do we want it? Oh. So I think that deep down, most people want there to be protest about injustice. What stops them taking part is simply that there is no feeling necessarily that it's going to make any difference. Because now what right-wing people generally like to say, no, people don't want to protest, they just want to get on with their lives, they just want to whinge and moan and be the sort of people that you were talking about earlier and that sort of thing. But I think people aren't as cynical as that. I think if people clearly aren't all selfish. For example, if everyone's selfish, why do people give blood? You know, I suppose the cynic could say, oh, typical, trying to get a free biscuit off the state. People come round your door. I mean, this happens quite a bit. I don't know, you know, in my road, people knock on your door every now and again and to tell you that you've left your headlights on. Quite friendly. They're not thinking, well, I don't want his battery to run out because I'm going to nick that in half an hour. I don't know. And also, I think the best example that proves that there is a sort of sense of protest in all of us. You just think of the popular films, even Hollywood, if they want to make a popular film, it's about the battle against injustice, Braveheart. It might be nonsense, but it's connecting with that people. And of course, the best example of all, Spartacus, one of the most popular films of all time, because it connects with that sense of wanting to be protest. And I don't think that film would have been as popular if, instead of the film that was made, the Romans had all come in to the field, said, which one is Spartacus? And all the slaves had gone, it's him over there, mate. He's nothing to do with us, you see. We're new Spartacus.
Mark, thank you very much for being on the show. Mark Steele, everybody. Now, freedom is something that people have always struggled for and fought for. But when people do have a legitimate complaint, they tend to get together a big petition and march on Downing Street. Now, of course, at Downing Street, this happens every day. They might as well be handed a coupon for Domino's Pizza for all they care. They don't know what's on it. That's not a good way of making a protest. If there are 5,000 of you and you've got a grievance, take it to Alton Towers. Not only will you piss everyone off everyone else that's there, but you'll also have a laugh, make it a day to remember. Nemesis. A lot of protests fail because people don't use their imaginations. For example, if your library's being closed, maybe there's a couple of dozen of you outside with placards saying, please don't close our library. Now, what you're actually doing there is stopping people going into the library. That ain't going to work. What you need to do is cut all the telephone wires, block off all the major roads, seize control of the local radio station, and kidnap Dale Winton. In fact, you don't even need to kidnap him. Invite him to a charity function, he'll turn up anyway. Tell him there's free bronzer. Then you go to the mayor and you say, you can have him back if you keep the library open. And even if they agree to the library staying open, don't give him back. Keep him as insurance. Everyone's a winner, baby. That's the truth. Nudism, that's a fairly popular cause at the moment. There's that bloke who keeps climbing up lampposts with his ghoulies dangling down. But that's not going to endear you to strangers, is it? You can't suddenly go overnight from being clothed to being completely naked. One step at a time, sweet Jesus. Become nude very gradually. First of all, start going out, just wearing one sock. And And after a couple of weeks of that, wander around with your flies open and a couple of top buttons undone. Or if you're a lady, tucking your skirt into your knickers. Over the years, show a little bit more flesh at a time, till eventually you're completely naked, no one even notices the difference. Of course, if that doesn't work, kidnap Dale Winton, you might as well. Oh, man. Post office closures. Now, it's all very well and good writing letters saying, please don't close our post office. What you need to do is get the nation on your side. Only one way for that, the charity record. There's been very famous ones over the world. Over the years, there was Feed the World, let them know it's Christmas time, and Feed the World Leftovers, let them know it's Boxing Day. Famous tune comes in handy on this one. Something like, you know that song D-A-S-C-O? You could go P-O-S-T-O, something like that. You know, you go, they are P, postal services. They are O, over the counter. They are S, stamps and stationery. They are T, TV licences. They are O. Offices, they're offices. You got a head? No, because that, if I'm not mistaken, is the clap of shame. My favourite protesters are gay rights activists because they do camp things like jostle bishops or they stand outside the House of Lords demanding the right to shag 16-year-old boys. Not sure I stand on that one, honestly, but I once protested outside a school for the right to shag 16-year-old girls. What in news crews there, a load of angry parents. Does anyone put your hands up? Anyone ever been beaten senseless with their own placard? Oh, are we so scared of debate in this country? You know that protest group, Parents Against Lamarr? Well, I'm against them. I don't agree with what they say, but I'd fight for their right to say it. Well, I've had to. Just because everyone in this country disagrees with me doesn't mean I'm wrong. Just means I'm a free-thinking radical maverick and a bit pervy. My next guest is a notorious pulpit crasher and gay rights activist. Please welcome 120 pounds of pink fury, Peter Tatchell, ladies and gentlemen. I think we should, describe exactly your credentials. You're leader of Outrage?
No, just one of the crew.
I suppose it was the Portillo thing that really brought you to the public's attention, was it?
I think perhaps the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Right.
Going into the pulpit on Easter Sunday and daring to criticise the Archbishop over his support for discrimination.
In what way? What was the problem that you had with the Church of England?
Well, Dr. Carey, he opposes an equal age of consent. He says discrimination in employment is okay. He's opposed to gay marriage or partnership rights.
But you must understand, from his point of view, that, the Bible does dictate that.
But Dr. Carey is very, very selective about what he and other Christian leaders follow in the Bible. I mean, they say in the Bible that eating shellfish is an abomination, yet I understand that the Archbishop is quite partial to the prawned cocktail. They say that in the Bible, it's okay to sell your daughter into slavery. You don't hear any advice from the Pope or the Archbishop of Canterbury about what the going price is.
But you can see how so often over the years, anyone who's trying to bring about some kind of civil change, I've almost always tarred with the sort of troublemaker brush. Do you feel that you suffer from that a lot?
Yeah, I think probably today's extremists, people in years later are seen as people who actually change things.
Well, it depends.
It's a bit like,
what kind of extremists
we
they
read
are.
newspapers now and take it for granted, but people had to fight for the right to publish newspapers because the governments of the day tried to stop people reading newspapers because they're afraid that alternative points of view would get out. I mean, women's votes. I mean, where would we be without the suffragettes? They had to fight to get the vote for women.
But outrage is, I mean, I suppose there is a link to the suffrage movement because, outrage has got some sort of dirty name in the press. Why do you think that's coming back? Do you think it's just purely homophobia?
I think it's just like with the suffragettes. When they were campaigning in the early part of the century, they were absolutely reviled.
Now, what do you think causes homophobia?
People who are homophobic are actually reacting in fear to their own repressed homosexuality. They can't deal with the fact that they themselves are gay. And the evidence of this was actually tested about 3 years ago by an American professor, Professor Henry Adams of the University of Georgia. He'd found that 80% of homophobic men were secret repressed homosexuals.
How did he discover this? Was he flirting?
No, he did a very interesting test. He wired this group of very homophobic men who said they were 100% heterosexual. He wired them up to a plethysmograph, which is a little small elasticated device which goes around the male member.
I think I've got one.
You pervert.
I haven't used it for scientific purposes, but it's fun.
It measures any sexual arousal. So when a man gets an erection, it expands. So it's a good way of testing what's actually happening down below. So he got these violently homophobic men to watch gay porn videos. And he found that 80% got erections. In other words, they got sexually turned on. So his conclusion was that homophobia is a deflected form of homosexuality in which the individual is reacting in violent ways against their own repressed homosexual desire, which they can't acknowledge and can't deal with.
Because I don't think it can be true in all cases, that anyone who's homophobic...
No, well, Professor Adams' research says only 8 out of 10. Well, it's still a pretty high proportion. You know.
But they say that about whiskers and cats preferring it, you know. I suspect most people would assume that gay people have rights. You know, obviously it was, you know, illegal until relatively recently in our history, very recently.
Well, it's still very illegal in lots of different ways. I mean,
well, what are the campaigns
like,
that
if you're in your local supermarket and you see some nice girl at the checkout and you get chatting and you exchange names and phone numbers, it's the most natural thing in the world to do, and everybody think, good luck to you. Well, if 2 gay men do that, it's the crime of cruising or soliciting, and you can be locked up for 2 years.
I did not know
under a law that dates back to the 19th century.
But IKEA would be closed down if that was put into effect.
And so would every gay club and bar in the country.
Yeah, I really didn't know that.
The paradox is that certain types of gay sex are now lawful, but most attempts to arrange, facilitate or invite a lawful sexual act between 2 men is still a crime punishable by 2 years jail.
So you can have sex, but you can't get round to it.
Exactly.
Now, the age of consent is, I suppose, the stick that you're most often beaten with. You know, people are worried about child molestation, and quite rightly. And then you're campaigning to say 14-year-olds should be allowed to have sex. Now, I understand your reasonings, but I can also see the link that is very easy to be drawn between those 2 statements.
The reason I say that the age of consent should be reduced to 14 for everyone, gay and straight, is simply because that's now the average age at which young people have their first sexual experience. So 50% are actually having sex before the age of 14. Now, I'm not saying that's right, and I wouldn't encourage anybody to have sex at any age, but if they are having sex, I don't think they should be treated as criminals. What they need is much earlier, better quality sex education in schools. Young kids need to be taught that they have the right to control their own bodies, and that means not just the right to say yes to sex, but also the right to say no. And if people are concerned about abuse, which I am, the best protection is to educate and empower those young people so they've got the knowledge, the skills and the confidence to say no to abusers and people who want to pressure them
to sex. Of course, but do you take my point about there being a legal cut-off point?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. 14 seems a sensible cut-off point because that's now the average age of first sex.
How old are you, by the way?
I'm 48.
Right, because I'm 33, and I admire your stance because as I've got older, all I've thought is, no, I want the legal age to be my age. I don't want people to start having sex till they're my age. I didn't get any when I was 14. I don't want no one else to get none.
Well, neither did I either. I didn't come out till I was 17, so I feel that I lost a few years. But, you know, I think just trying to be fair and, you know, things have moved on beyond our time.
As a leader of a gay rights organisation, I hope you've made up for lost time.
Okay,
thank you very much for being on. Peter Tatchell. So, what have we learned? Well, we've learned that you can go and buy a gingerbread man. I'm sure the baker's not going to say, person! You can put boot polish on your face and sing, down upon the Swanee shore, but just best not to do it at a Notting Hill Carnival. Got better music there for a start. Do what you want. Have you ever heard people complain that they can't use the word gay anymore because it's changed its meaning? Oh, we can't say we're having a lovely gay party this weekend. Yes, you can. Of course you can. You just have to invite different people. Good night.